Hey, Sub here. Wanted to talk a little bit about a little deeper into this blog post that dropped. So Call of Duty today dropped a pretty hefty blog post detailing a lot of stuff coming in season two, a lot of changes. And in my opinion, they really laid the groundwork for some massive shifts in how Call of Duty operates going forward. And so that's what I want to focus on right now because I think it's a little bit underlooked or overlooked by people, and it's not really getting emphasized as much as it should right now. But I think what they said in this blog post in a couple of different places is so impactful that it's worth looking at. So when you look at the blog post itself, it's the community update, right? And they say the Call of Duty community update, January 2025. And I think this part right here is super interesting. That is by Activision, Ricochet, Anti-Cheat, Treyarch, Raven Software, Beanox, and Demonware. So that's, to me, very interesting because it's typically Activision or it's typically Call of Duty or it's typically Raven or so whoever's operating like the game at that point. They made a point and they revisit this point several times before they get to, I think, the most important phrase, probably the most important sentence in Call of Duty, recent history, and definitely what could be the most important thing looking forward, is that they talk about, they have basically all the major players in Call of Duty together named on this. And that is, or at least all of the active players, right? Infinity Ward's not on this list because they don't have a game out right now. They're not in, they're in development phase. But you have Treyarch, you have with multiplayer Black Ops, you have Raven, you have Beanox, which does map work. You have Demonware, which is the servers. They handle the servers. You have Ricochet, and you have Activision corporate. So I say it's the most important for a couple of reasons. And we've talked about this before, but predominantly one of the biggest problems that we have is this game is just not stable year to year. We had MW3, which was very well received and very well enjoyed by a great number of people. And there was an expectation going into this year that we would see a massive growth, especially in Warzone, from year to year. Because if you recall, Warzone in Modern Warfare 3 had very little to it, especially on the big map, right? It got some resurgence love, it got rebirth, it got some changes to resurgence, and then big map got really nothing. They got ranked, we didn't. On the big map side. And so there was kind of an expectation of, well, big map and battle royale is going to be a big component going forward, especially looking forward to Verdansk coming back. And instead we got a disaster, right? The game has been a disaster since launch, which really spoiled an excellent launch of Black Ops 6. Black Ops 6 reinvigorated the player base, had a lot of people excited for Warzone, and to have Warzone fail this badly has got to have been a huge blow to Activision. And instead of burying their head in the sand, they are coming out with this blog post, which I think is important, and I think it lays out a very important future that aligns with some leaks that we had. So I want to look at this part. Ahead of season 2, Ricochet, Anti-Cheat, Warzone multiplayer, and zombies. Instead of, they say, ahead of season 2's launch, Black Ops 6 and Call of Duty Warzone on January 28th, we're here to address the comprehensive feedback we've been hearing from our community in recent weeks. So, pause. They hear us when we talk. When we tell them it's not working, and if we stay on them and we make it clear that most people are unhappy with things, they do hear that. And I think it's important that they recognize that to us as the player base, because it tells us that we are in the right and we are doing things the right way, which is to make noise and to make it apparent when things aren't working right. I'm not saying that we should be abusive. I'm not saying that we should be overly aggressive in ways that aren't constructive. But when there are problems, and there are massive problems with the game, that those things need to be focused on, right? We can't allow things to just coast as is, because then it doesn't incentivize them to fix it. Okay. And we've seen that in the past where things aren't, people don't complain as much. And so things linger longer than they should, versus when people get really upset with things very loudly, they tend to get fixed faster. And so that's a positive. This is a positive at the end of the day for the players, because it means that we do matter. We do have influence here, right? We don't get just what they give us. We tell them when we don't like it and that they have to make changes. There are some other topics that we have to work on, and they might not budge on that, but we got to work with what we've got. And right now we're making progress. Okay. Now they say members from various development teams and studios dedicated to specific systems, modes, and functions across the Call of Duty franchise have provided insights below into how we're prioritizing what matters to our players today. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is that we have multiple studios and teams together putting this post together. This is how I read it, and I think this is how they intend it to come across. Up until now, every studio has lived in isolation from the others. They do their own thing, and when they have to overlap, they get together at the end, right at the last minute, and they try and figure out how to fit it all together. This has been a problem with Warzone being headed by Raven for the last few years. Raven's job is to try and shoehorn everything that these studios come up with and fit it into Warzone. All right. Now, Black Ops or Modern Warfare 2 to Modern Warfare 3 worked really well because it was a continuation. Okay. They didn't have any radical changes to how things work. Treyarch made some radical changes, and it's been a catastrophe. All right. When Caldera came in, it was the same story. It has been the history of Warzone, right? The Modern Warfare 2 to Modern Warfare 3 transition was the exception. It is the one time it actually worked smoothly. And it's because as developers, they've been in these silos. They don't talk to each other. They don't work together. They don't do a lot of things that you would think a big company would do. They are separate teams on separate projects with separate visions for how the game should work. And in the past, when every game stood alone from the others, that was fine. Every year you got a game, you liked the game or you didn't like the game. It was Black Ops, it was Modern Warfare, it was World War II, right? And you played it or you didn't. You liked it or you didn't. Now, we don't live in that world anymore. We live in the world where Warzone is a factor, where we get used to, as players, the game playing a certain way. And when it radically changes and it doesn't incorporate the best parts of the previous game, we don't tolerate that anymore. Okay? It used to be games like Ghost would come along and everybody would be like, oh, this game is trash. We're going to skip this year. And now with Warzone and with the way that games play now with live service and all of that, it's just not an option, right? You have to be able to pick up the game at any point and play it, and it has to feel right. And it hasn't done that because all of these teams have worked on their own. Okay? And so now they have members of various development teams and studios dedicated to specific systems across the franchise, providing their insights below on how we're prioritizing what matters to our players. So, this is super critical to the future of Call of Duty. Call of Duty cannot go on like this. We cannot have every year a messy integration with Warzone, a completely different game that erases the best parts of the previous years to do a vision of something that doesn't work, that only lasts for a year, and that gets wiped out by something else. It's not sustainable. And as everyone who's been a franchise fan for a long time can tell you, there are times where games come out that are just abysmal and no one likes them. And so they don't play. Ghosts, for example, right? Or there are games that really alienate huge chunks of the player base. Advanced Warfare, not liked by a lot of people. Infinite Warfare, aside from the plot, not liked by a lot of people. All right. There are a lot of things that radical changes can do to drive players away. And Call of Duty is not at the point where they can get away with having a bad game every couple years, because it messes up the whole flow of the game, of the gameplay by the players. So we've established that that the studios have not worked together previously. I want to go all the way to the end, because we're going to talk about what I think is the most important paragraph and potentially the most important sentence detailing the future of Call of Duty. And it's this. Here's the paragraph. And it says, which for the first time has brought our teams and products together into a unified development environment. This is what we need. So I'm going to read this whole paragraph and we're going to dissect it a little bit. And then we're going to just hope that they are executing on what they say. It says, as a parting thought, we want to take a moment to reflect on the significance of Black Ops 6's integration, the largest in Call of Duty history, which for the first time has brought our teams and products together into a unified development environment. While this transformation has presented its share of obstacles, it also paves the way for more ambitious updates and closer collaboration in the future. We're essentially laying a foundation to make new technology immediately available to all of our studios, improving development pipelines and stability of porting features between titles. Thank you. This is literally what Call of Duty needs. We need consistency between titles. We need the best features of the game to just work. Okay? If you want to try new things here and there, that's great. And they should be tried out. And if they're great, you adopt them. If they aren't great, you get rid of them. Instead of this whole, we're going to shift things and throw a bunch of dice into a cup and then see what we're going to play this year, which is what we've had, right? We need consistency, especially with Warzone, but in Call of Duty as well, right? We have to stop erasing the best parts of the game, the things that everybody loves, for the sake of just of nobody thought of that before the game launched. Like, for example, one of the things coming back is achievement tracking, right? Camo tracking. Why was that not, like, that is such an obvious W. The fact that it was developed last year and didn't make it into this game is a crime. Because we as the players, and I understand the development side of it, I do, but as a player, as a consumer, to have something good in the past and then have it taken away in the future is not, to me, progress, right? That's a loss. Okay? I've lost this asset. I've lost this experience that was previously available to me in your product, right? That's why if you are shopping brands, right? If you're shopping to a different brand and I want to go to Battlefield, I want to go to Marvel Rivals or whatever, I don't expect the same experience, right? I don't expect the same things one year after another because they're different games. However, if I buy a Call of Duty product and it has this very obvious feature that is good, I want that feature to stay. Okay? And so, because the studios have lived in such silos for so long, they develop independent of each other. They come up with their own ideas. And by the time we figure out that something is really good and needs to stick around, it's too late. It's not making release. We got to wait 1, 2, 3 seasons to see it again. All right. And it creates this yo-yo effect of the game is good. It gets to a really good spot. The new game comes out, it wrecks everything that they've done before and introduces a bunch of new stuff, some of which is good, some of which is trash. And in the process of clearing out the trash and bringing back the good stuff from the previous year, we finally get the game to a good spot in season 5, and then it's out the door and we do the cycle again. Call of Duty has got to be consistent. It is too long. We have done this for too many times. We are way past the point where you can just release an annual title and have it be the same kind of do this experience over and over and over again, right? Where it breaks everything that was good before. This foundation that they're laying has to be executed correctly. They have to do it. And if they can do it, this will set up Call of Duty to be to be a return to the phenomenal franchise that it was before. But if they can't do it, or they don't for whatever reason, then we are in for a very rough patch going forward. Okay? We need this to work. And it's in the hands of the upper management at Activision and Microsoft to do it. So, hopefully that opens the door for some optimism for the future of Call of Duty. Hopefully they execute on this and they don't backtrack and they don't screw it up. And going forward, we actually get to have a really good, really enjoyable game. That's what I got for you this time. If you have got an opinion, disagree, drop it in the comments. Otherwise, I'll catch you on the next one.